another little blonde girl that walks up that I feel was a very close friend to John Bonet. The mother was a very close friend, and the little girls are both in the scene, but they don't look like little pageant babies now. They just look like little dressed up kids for Christmas. So John Bonet is sort of showing me the feel of the party, and I'm not scared, and I'm not feeling anything bad about this party if I'm her. Like, it's just a kid's party. I ask again in my mind, who killed you? So I'm trying to get any kind of images that she will let me see. And the first thing I notice is with her face, she goes straight from being a little kid to the adult, older looking child woman, on how to word it. She's in her 20s with the long pale hair, and she puts her head down. There's shame connected to this. But the shame happened and started happening before she was killed. So this happened in her day-to-day life, and I think it might have something to do with what she's talking about with her brother. I don't know if there was violence or addiction in the house or something that was hidden like this that caused her shame. She does not speak about it. She does not want to speak about it. She is not ready to speak about it. She does not acknowledge it. So this is a soul that crossed over. Keep in mind, when we are traumatized on this side and step out of our bodies and cross over, if we have, let's say, been murdered, fallen out of a plane, fallen out of the sky, jumped off a building, actually, if you commit suicide or do something by your own hand, you're probably coming right back through because that's from her. And so it's something traumatic. Let's say you got hit by a bus, it's across the street. Everybody that has that kind of trauma, they're going to be conditioned on the other side energetically so that they are back to neutral on a soul level, so that their energy is neither in trauma or out of trauma. And I know that's a weird concept because they don't have the physical body anymore, but the etheric trauma, the trauma that comes with that is.
Mom, you all right?
Good. Lies on the soul. So it's like you wear it. It's like somebody's perfect that. They wear the trauma. So a lot of times children are involved, they will be put through onto the other side where their energy will be brought back into harmony. So they're not living on a soul level in the trauma. Because what can happen in trauma, at least from my experience from energy that I pick up around me from people that have passed on, clients that come to me, is that if you cross over in that kind of trauma, there's an inkling of like, I want to get back to my family. So you might just jump right back into coming somewhat neutral. So on a lot of instances, they will take the person's energy on the other side, almost energetically cleaning it, I guess, and making it neutral so they can make a decision, not out of fear, not out of trauma, and make that decision. Now, what's interesting about hands, and this is all true, to different degrees and different levels, depending on what the soul wants. Eventually, we all get there. That is true. But sometimes we retain our personality on a soul level. So the personality of the person goes through many lifetimes. That never leaves. So the soul mark of a person's soul is really to somebody like a medium. Does not mean you want to respond, and does not mean you are ready on a soul level to find out who killed you. Sometimes people don't know it for quite some time. And again, when I'm illustrating time versus time on this side versus time on that side, it's very different. It's very long and dense over here. Over there, we are without that density. And before you incarnate back. And for you, you live on the other side in a different way. Now, the one thing I noticed with John Bonet as the adult, or she's in spirit and her family is here, obviously, except for her mother, which is another interesting thing. When I brought up her mother, she does say that she connected with her mother, but her mother is not around her right now. And I know that a lot of us like to think when we cross over and we go with are true, but it's not always applicable to every person that passes. It's different in every single case. Sometimes the energy of what you experienced in this life is done. And sometimes not always applicable to every person, that it's different in every single case. Sometimes the energy of what you experienced in this life is done. And sometimes until a person is ready to see what happened over here, a person over here is not going to connect with them on that level because there's something that the soul is trying to learn. And I feel she's in a learning process. Again, If she were alive as a person now, she's extremely different than the little JonBenet pageant girl that we knew, pageant child actually. And I think those pageants, I don't know what to say about that, but anyway, the little girl is very different now. As a young woman, she, to me, in spirit, is studious. She is focused. She would be a researcher of some kind. She really does remind me of a librarian, and I know there's not a field, and she would research. She's focused like that. She's introverted now. She's not as extroverted, and that could be because of her experience. But as she grew, she became more contemplative. Again, she was a 6-year-old on this side. So what happens when I speak to her energy, she does not want to say who it is. Her head lowers. That is shame to me. Every time I try to telepathically or suggest him JonBenet, I can see her lower her head. So she is not ready to tell me, or maybe she just doesn't want to tell me, and that's perfectly fine as well, because they don't have to tell a medium. Just because you go to a medium and want to pop up does not mean they have to pop up. They're under no obligation to be tied to people on the earth. Now, the reason she is tied to people on the earth is because she is learning something and invested in learning that experience by growing up with them on the other side, which also gives me a little bit of a clue to her passing. Because she is still focused on being in the family unit, although she's not physically here, tells me that she was taken out of her life too early. Now, what do I mean by that? Obviously, she was murdered. We know this. But it was not an accident, and it was not something that was supposed to happen to her. So, for example, many a woman has come to me and they have terminated a pregnancy through their own choice. And when they walk in, some of them, I don't see that on them. I don't see there's nothing in their energy that lets me know that. Other times in spirit. And so I'll ask them, were they pregnant 17 years ago? And they'll look at me usually horrified or like, no. And the answer is yes, because the child, its earthbound experience was just in utero, but the mother made a free will decision not to bring that soul through. The soul is still growing up on the other side with the family on this side. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know the reason for that. I've never really been clear on it.
Oh dear.
There's another.
What am I?
Eh?
Yeah. Oh, why?
How's that?
Just repeat. Oh, my dear.
Hope they can see that in the middle. I've not got to hang it yet, eh?
How you will do eventually. Don't stay.
I walk a bit with this laptop. Rick said he was coming, but obviously no. If he fell asleep, that's what I'll be saying.
To heal and to understand the various energy of people who think like this. And there was more than one person that actually took her life. That much I can get from the energy around this conversation,
right.
Is that there was more than one person. And these were adult people, they were not children. Okay, so there's not one person snuck into her house. It has nothing to do with that. And I think on a bigger scale, she still on some level does not want to speak of this. I don't feel her mother was aware of what happened or was happening until the morning that she passed. So in other words, I feel the mother may have overlooked, not paid attention to, not followed through with gut instinct, ignored, been too sick with her own cancer, not wanted to deal with it, had a thought, thrown it out of her head, whatever the problem is. But I feel there is a group of people, and I feel that her passing is not just someone's a freak and wants to have sex with a kid and wants to choke them or whatever the hell else. It's not that. That's actually not what it is. There is another purpose for it, and I feel that leading up to that purpose, JonBenet carried shame with her. That sounds like abuse in the house to me on some level, or with somebody that is connected to the family home, either through pageants, through photography, through something along these lines. I do feel, in essence, that we're never going to know on this what happened to her. So I don't feel everybody is going to have concrete evidence. Like, I don't feel anybody's just going to like pop up and say, you know, I was there, I saw this, but I do feel people were there and they saw it. And what's interesting is I'm very confused with her energy because the first time I channeled her in, I was feeling like on the night of the Christmas party when she's going home, that she was not asleep, like her father said, going into the house and that he was carrying her, that she was actually awake. But then I turn my back and I'm going up a different stairway and I feel like I'm in somebody else's house when I'm speaking like that. So I actually feel like when John Bonet was, see, I don't know if this is her parents' house or it's the house of the party, actually. I feel like John Bonet was being her usual precocious self and not listening. She would be very, how would I word this? She would be very much a child that would listen to you, and then like it would be like she would eat too much chocolate and decide, I'm not listening to anybody and run wild. Okay, so we know how little kids get like that.
If you're watching this, Alan,
she's going
give
down
me
the walkway,
a phone call.
going to her house, which is on my right as I'm looking through her eyes, but I'm
Give
going
me a
to
thing
the
call.
left now. She's been told to come here, so I feel like her father grabbed her hand, and I feel like she's supposed to be subdued and she's supposed to be quiet, and she's jumping and like running around. She's, you know, when kids drag their feet when you hold their hands, she's doing something like that, not quite as like aggressive as you might think a kid throwing a tantrum, but she is putting up a fuss and it's away from her house. So I feel like the beginning of this murder started away from her house. I do feel like there's grown men involved with this. This is just what I'm picking up around. She will not say. She is not going to say. She covers her mouth. Like she does not want to speak it. The reason somebody might not want to speak it is because it would be devastating to them on some level. And I know that you think because she's dead, because she's on the other side and she's in the light, that it shouldn't be that way. But we are given our free will on both sides to experience things. And I feel she can't talk about this. She cannot talk about this. And I don't know who knows and why they know, but she doesn't want to talk about it. So I can't get that. But I do know she has a struggle with her father in a physical sense, walking up a driveway where her little footprints are on like kind of a muddy path, but it's not to her house. I thought at first it was to her house. It is not to her house. It's going in a different direction. So if her house is here and I'm her, I'm going over here. So it's like I'm across the street to the left. I'm going up this little pathway and she doesn't want to go. She really doesn't want to go. I keep hearing words like there's business going on. There's a focus like that. I can hear people laughing all over. I can hear them laughing. And then she just stops. It's like she's putting up a fuss. I think what I'm feeling, which is weird, I've never felt this from a spirit before, but I feel like too many people pry into her life and she doesn't want to let you know. She doesn't want to let me know. I'll just say she doesn't want to let me know. She doesn't want me telling you. Interesting because as a child, when she was born, her natal chart was, because I know part of her chart, if I'm to believe the time of birth, so I'll just go by the records that say it's authentic. Who knows? You know how people in the hospitals, they write one time and it's 10 minutes later. Anyway, her time of birth, she is a little girl with an Aquarius moon.
I think so.
And a Gemini rising. This is a very
this been going through it all.
Fun-loving, rambunctious, talkative, loving to tell people everything in the neighborhood on kind of a kid. As she would grow in her life, she would progress. Astrologically, we progress approximately through 3 signs in a lifetime if we were to live on this side 70, 80 years old. So she would go from being a little kid Leo into a Virgo. She would go from an Aquarius moon into a Pisces moon. She would go from a Gemini rising to a Cancer rising. So as I'm seeing her as a 28-year-old in my head at growing up on the other side, she's understated. She does not wear a lot of makeup. She is kind of taller than I thought she would be. I thought she would be shorter, but I don't really know how tall her mom was or her dad is. But I just, for some reason, thought she wouldn't be this tall. She strikes me as taller. Anyway,
a great man.
From what I'm feeling, there was
a great man, Jimmy Milne,
up to a different house, and I believe that her dad grabbed
legend
her
in his own mind.
The hand, put her like picked her up to carry her in there while she was struggling. She wasn't hugely struggling, and it wasn't her house. So something started before she got home. So I do believe her mother and her brother. I absolutely know her brother knows what happened to her. I don't know that he remembers it consciously. He could be traumatized and probably is beyond belief, but I feel like he is aware. If he were to go under hypnosis, he may not be overtly aware, maybe blocking it out, but I believe that he knows what happened. Like if I were to give him a choice of 1, 2, or 3, I believe he would be able to say it. He's not going to say it, and maybe it's locked down inside of him because I think he's probably only 30 or 31 or 2 or whatever. But I feel like there's knowledge on his part because I feel like the two of them were tied together in it. So I don't feel like he killed her. I feel like he has the same shame she has. This is the way I would word this. I feel it's more, I feel it's known. I feel like people know what happened. I feel like they know what happened, and I feel it's connected to, how do I want to word this? Business. I feel it's a business. This is a transaction. That's how I feel about it. And other than that, I cannot tell you who did it. She will not tell me. There was more than one person, if not 3 male adult people. That's the connection I get to it. I do also feel for some reason that she changes the way that she looks on the other side, so that you can't find her over there, so she doesn't look like she looked here, which tells me besides being a pageant child, she was in something else that we could look at. So I feel like I'm going down that line, but I can't get it to speak when it's not ready to speak. So I'm just.
Yeah,
Hi everybody, my name is Sloan from SloanBella.com, and I'm back with my second video on JonBenet Ramsey. This one is answering questions that you guys messaged me about what I was picking up around JonBenet's passing. And a lot of them had to do with Patsy and why Patsy wasn't responsible, or was she responsible? Was her father responsible? Was Burke responsible after he did that TV show? Was the older brother, I think it was John Andrew, responsible? Who was responsible? Was it the preacher in the neighborhood? I think his name was Bob that everybody was asking about. Who was responsible for JonBenet? Here is what I got really very vividly and very strongly. First off, when it comes to Patsy, Patsy is not prepared to bring anything that's going to cause her scrutiny or criticism. So she's going to present herself in a way that is best for her, in a light that suits her. Having said that, I got this strong feeling that she loved her daughter and let her daughter down, and she was aware of this. I don't believe that Patsy thought that this was going to happen to her daughter. I feel like she thought it could happen. I feel like Patsy thought she was lucky, or it was a lucky circumstance. She loved JonBenet in the sense that JonBenet brought her, everything that she wanted and how she wanted to be seen. So it was slightly from an ego standpoint, but there was a genuine connection there. And I do feel that Patsy blames her husband for this. I got that really strongly. She blames him for the passing of their daughter.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't say he did it. She blames him as though it's his acquaintances, his reasons, and because of him that their daughter passed, which is an interesting thing that maybe you're putting her out there in a way that's very public. So Patsy was giving me the impression, although she did put her out in the pageant world, there were other things that were happening because of her husband that put JonBenet in more danger. Now, when it came to Burke, I did say in the first video that JonBenet absolutely thought that that was really ridiculous, that anybody thought that her brother would have killed her. That didn't happen. It was not Burke. Burke did not kill her. I know that he appeared very weirdly, very shaken, with odd facial expressions on a afternoon talk show recently, and this is what led people to believe that he was guilty of something. I would word it differently. I would say that Burke traumatized through the same kind of abuse that his sister endured, both physical, mental, and sexual. I'm going to sexually abused. I feel both children were in the process of being publicly displayed in certain ways, visually, through camera, through movie, but especially JonBenet. But I feel like Burke was traumatized through these abuses as well. So when you are dealing with Burke and you are watching him on camera, I think what you're seeing is a traumatized person who has gone through a lot and doesn't have the appropriate responses at the appropriate times because the personality isn't integrated fully into him. So he's responding as if he's different people at different times. That's why I actually think it's inappropriate. I think there's more than one personality with that kid. And I think when he went on camera, he was behaving in the personality that he thought he was supposed to. So this is a fragmented personality is what I'm seeing. It isn't the personality of the 9-year-old who killed his sister because he didn't kill his sister. That's what she said to me. On that, I'm clear of. Has nothing to do with Burke killing John Bonet. That didn't happen. That's not what I saw, and that's my take on it. You can have your take on it, but that's my take from the energy I felt. Now, what I do feel was happening at the time, and I feel there's a lot of guilty parties, including some